Picture the biggest steak you have ever eaten. Now imagine an animal that could feed your entire street for a month. That animal exists. It is walking around right now. It is legal in some places to hunt it, and you have never once seen it on a menu. That is strange. Cows get eaten, pigs get eaten, even animals far more dangerous than an elephant end up on a plate somewhere. So why not the elephant, the biggest, meatiest land animal alive? Most people assume the answer is simple. They assume it is illegal everywhere, or that the meat is somehow poisonous, or that no one has ever tried. None of that is quite right. People have eaten elephants for hundreds of thousands of years, and in some places, people still do. The real reason we do not eat elephants has almost nothing to do with the animal itself. It has everything to do with something happening inside your own head. Stay till the end because the last part of this story is not really about elephants at all. It is about you. Let's start with the obvious question. Can you even eat one? Yes, you can. Archaeologists have found ancient bones with cut marks on them, hundreds of thousands of years old, next to stone tools. Early humans hunted enormous animals like these on purpose. A single kill could feed a group for weeks. In a world with no supermarkets, that math was irresistible. So the ban is not physical. It is not that the meat is toxic. In fact, some hunters who have tried it describe the taste as rich, almost buttery in certain parts, especially the fat around the feet. That is where a surprising amount of the fat sits, not marbled through the muscle like beef, but pooled in the pads of the feet. But here's what is fascinating. If you cook the muscle meat over an open fire the way ancient hunters did, it turns tough, really tough. Some describe it as rubbery, almost like chewing on a tire. Young elephants are said to be more tender. Old bulls are basically inedible without hours of slow cooking, so taste is not the wall either. Plenty of tough, unglamorous meats get eaten around the world every day, so what is actually stopping us? Here is where the story gets interesting. In parts of Central Africa today, elephant meat is not banned by culture at all. Surveys of people in places like the Central African Republic found that a huge majority would eat it if it were offered to them. It shows up quietly in cities as a prestige food, something wealthy urban buyers pay extra for, almost like a luxury item. So, in some corners of the world right now, the taboo you assume is universal simply does not exist. But that is only half the story, because in most of the world, eating an elephant is not just frowned upon, it triggers something closer to horror. Ask most people in Europe, North America, or East Asia to imagine eating elephant meat, and you will see them flinch. Not because they have tried it and hated it, they have never tried it. The reaction happens before the food even reaches their mouth. So what changed? Why did one of humanity's oldest food sources become one of its strongest taboos? Researchers who study our long relationship with elephants have a theory, and it has a name worth remembering. They call it the humanization of elephants. Over thousands of years, as humans began living alongside elephants instead of only hunting them, something shifted. We started training them, working with them, watching them mourn their dead, noticing how they seem to recognize individual humans years later. Slowly, elephants stopped feeling like prey. They started feeling like someone. And that is the anchor for everything else in this story. Once an animal crosses that invisible line from thing to someone, eating it stops feeling like eating. It starts feeling like something closer to a crime. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a savanna at dawn. A herd moves past you, slow and quiet. A mother keeping her calf tucked against her side. An older female, the matriarch, stops the whole group with a single low rumble you can barely hear, more felt than heard. She is remembering something, maybe a drought from decades ago, maybe a route her own mother once showed her. That memory is the reason the herd survives. Now hold that image next to a cow in a field. Both are large mammals. Both can be turned into food, but only one of them in most of our minds feels like it is thinking about you the way you are thinking about it. That gap is not really about biology. Pigs are famously intelligent too, arguably smarter than dogs, and they still end up as bacon without much guilt attached. So intelligence alone cannot explain the taboo either. But then something else enters the picture: ivory. For centuries, elephants were hunted less for their meat and more for the two curved treasures growing out of their skulls. Roughly a third of an elephant's ivory sits embedded inside the skull itself, which is one reason poachers often take the entire head. Ivory built empires. It carved thrones, piano keys, ornaments for the wealthiest people on Earth, and that demand did something the meat trade never could. It pushed elephant populations toward collapse. So what killed the practice of casually eating elephant meat in most of the world? It was not discussed, it was math. Once a species gets hunted toward extinction, eating it stops being a private choice and starts being an act with global consequences. Elephants became protected under international law. Killing one, buying its meat, even possessing a piece of it, can now mean serious prison time in most countries. The animal that once fed entire tribes became legally untouchable almost everywhere, except in a handful of regions where local exemptions still exist. There is also also a quieter danger hiding inside that meat, one most people never think about. Big wild animals like these often carry parasites and pathogens picked up over a lifetime of roaming, drinking from the same water as other wildlife, absorbing whatever toxins sit in the soil around them. Meat that never passes through any inspection, cooked over an open fire instead of a regulated kitchen, can carry risks that a supermarket steak never will. That is part of why bushmeat in general, not just elephant meat, stays banned in places like the United States, wrapped into the same laws that keep unregulated wild game off the shelves. But even that legal wall does not fully explain the emotional one. Here's the strangest part of all. Even in countries where elephants are not endangered locally, where meat is technically available, most people still would not touch it. Compare that to something like eating horse, which is legal in many countries and still triggers strong discomfort in others purely because of cultural meaning rather than any law. The elephant taboo runs even deeper than that. It has almost nothing to do with rules anymore. It has become instinct, and that instinct did not appear overnight. Go back roughly 2,000 years, and Roman soldiers in North Africa were said to have eaten elephant meat after conquering territory where the animals still roamed wild. Back then, killing and eating one carried no more weight than killing and eating any other large game. The taboo we feel today simply did not exist yet. Something had to build generation by generation before an elephant could stop being livestock and start being something closer to family. Every culture on Earth quietly draws its own invisible fence around which animals are food and which animals are not. In parts of the world, dogs are companions and never dinner. In other parts of the world, cows are sacred and untouchable. There were entire centuries in Japan when eating any meat at all was treated as taboo, a rule that lasted longer than most modern countries have even existed before it quietly reversed. In your own culture right now, there is probably an animal you would never dream of eating, even though somewhere else on the planet people eat it without a second thought. So what actually decides which animal ends up on that fence? Usually it comes down to one of three things: how closely we work alongside the animal, how much we see ourselves reflected in its behavior, or how directly its survival becomes tied to our own guilt. Elephants check every single box. They have worked beside humans for centuries, carrying loads, hauling logs, appearing in ceremonies. They show grief, memory, and social bonds that look uncomfortably familiar, and their populations have been pushed so close to the edge that eating one now feels less like a meal and more like erasing something irreplaceable. Put those three together, and you do not just get a rule against eating elephants, you get a feeling, a gut reaction that arrives before any explanation does.
Even today, in a handful of places where elephant populations are being managed through population control, cold animals sometimes get turned into dried meat, sold quietly in markets the way beef jerky gets sold anywhere else. People who have tried it describe it as unremarkable, not disgusting, not amazing, just meat, which almost makes the taboo stranger, not weaker. If the actual eating experience is this ordinary, the wall keeping most of us from ever trying it cannot be about flavor at all. Now, zoom out, because this was never really a story about elephants. Every single one of us walks around with an invisible list in our heads, animals we would never eat, without ever consciously writing that list ourselves. Nobody sat you down and explained the rule. You absorbed it from your culture, the way you absorbed your accent, without noticing it happen. And the moment someone suggests breaking that rule, your body reacts before your brain finishes the sentence. That reaction is not really about ethics or health or law. It is about identity. The animals we refuse to eat tell us more about who we think we are than the animals we choose to eat ever could. Elephants did not earn their place on that list because they are the smartest animal, or the most endangered, or the tastiest, or the worst tasting. They earned it because somewhere along the way we stopped seeing them as food and started seeing a reflection of ourselves. A mother protecting her young. A family that remembers. A creature that mourns. We drew a line around them without ever voting on it, without ever writing it down, and most of us never even noticed the line appear. The elephant never asked to be spared. We just could not bring ourselves to look it in the eye and call it dinner.